Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today is November 25th, 2025, 1 month from Christmas, but also if you're in the States, just 2 days away from Thanksgiving. So we have lots of people in the States who are starting to take a few days off here, probably starting tomorrow more than today. But for today, you have myself and Andy. I'm Brian, and we'll be guiding the AI ship today for a little bit of time. I think this will be maybe a slightly shorter show than we typically do, but we have a couple
Wishful
things.
thinking, wishful thinking.
No, we're doing it today, Andy.
Okay.
I'm putting my proverbial foot down. I can't do it on this desk. We're doing it today, Andy. I believe in us. We can do this. We can be succinct and short and still have a great show. So I'm excited
Okay,
about it.
cool.
Also, I like your I gotta say, I like the vest. It's a vest, right?
Yeah, Patagonia.
It's very cool looking. All right, very like fall and festive and kind of fits the whole
It's
vibe
part of
here.
part of my Thanksgiving holiday prep here.
Yeah,
We're trying to shift us slowly but surely toward Thursday into the mood.
exactly. All right, well, welcome to Cisco and Double A Ron, who are already in the chat. Thanks, guys, for being here. We'll do our best. Actually, you know what? I would say that, but as our faithful listeners know, we've been having a heck of a time in the last probably 2 weeks now with the platform that we use for the podcast. And unfortunately, it's still being problematic because I cannot actually be in the chat. I'd have to go over to YouTube to do that. So we're not ignoring you. We're reading you, but I can't actually respond to you in the chat. And I don't know. We'll see if the end button actually ends at the end of the show. We'll get to that later. That's our own problems. That has nothing to do with AI. So, Andy, do you want to kick us off with a news story, and then we'll kind of throw a few out there and keep going?
Yeah, I do. We're going to talk about the model wars, but there's also the chip wars out there. And one of the things that happened literally overnight, and surfaced in the news feeds this morning is that Meta is in discussions with Google to use their TPUs, tensor processing units,
Mm.
in their data centers. And so this overnight in the pre-market caused Nvidia's stock to drop by 4%, because
Significant.
the assumptions behind Nvidia's very high valuations, which have really tempered. It had been as high as 207, 208, I think, just weeks ago, and now it's down in the 170s probably at this point, with that 4% drop. I haven't looked at the price. I'm afraid to this morning, but anyway, the chip wars are underway, and there's enormous investment being made there. But I wanted to just tell you that I came across a news item, and I haven't read the actual study that's published in the Nature Photonics Journal, but there's a breakthrough in optical computing for chips. And one of the problems with lasers as the light for instead of electricity and electrons running through the chips, is that it's difficult to make it happen in parallel. So you can send multiple electrons down different paths through a GPU, but when you're using a laser, you're putting a burst of laser light in, and you either have to have an enormous array of lasers to multiplex that or whatever. So anyway, there's these constraints that have been true about optical computing that make optical, which is faster and better in many ways in terms of power consumption compared to electronics. So anyway, there's the results of an experimental optical computing prototype with a series of comparative tests against standard GPU processing schemes. And it kind of blows away the potential of GPUs. And what they did was they used a conventional optical hardware component alongside a novel encoding and processing method so that they could capture and parse tensor packages in a chip with a single laser shot. So multiple tensor packages, a single laser shot through the entire optical package, and multiple outputs through the standard electronics. So this is a breakthrough in just concept about how you manage to get an optical computing chip as opposed to an electronic one.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually. And if I'm not mistaken, back when we did a sort of a show about smart city and talking about optical and stuff, that there's also a significant cost reduction with using light and laser and stuff. So perhaps it's also a way to get those multiple outputs, as you were saying, but at a significantly reduced cost, and maybe even in terms of heat as well, as far as
That's
energy.
right. It dramatically reduces the energy and the side effects of energy burning through copper.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I'd have to go back and find the show. I wish I knew what the title was right off the top of my head, but we did a whole show where we broke down copper versus light and how that impacts and stuff like that. So if I can find it before the end of the show, I'll share it. But it was maybe 1 or 2 months ago, I think, or so on there. All right, now Andy, before I go into the next news, I am just going to double check, because I mean, literally, as I said, that's our podcasting or whatever. I lost the thing that said we're live, so I just want to make sure you still show that this
I
is
show
still showing
live
live.
and recording 6:08.
I know it's fun times. I was just worried, but it looks like Jen and Greg and all them have joined the chat as well. So hopefully everybody's still able to get us. I know it's on a delay, but hopefully everybody's still cool with that. But just goes to show you, I shouldn't have opened my mouth, because immediately after I did that, I saw it disappear on my screen. So one of my news stories here, Andy, is just a light one. Double A Ron says, "Yep, you're live. Thank you, Double A Ron. We appreciate you." One of the news stories I wanted to bring up really quick is just a silly one, a simple one. It's something I thought of when I first saw the new version of Sora come out. Sora meaning like the app now, and they had their Cameo version, and I thought, oh, well. Let's be honest. In AI, right, Andy, lots of names are sort of reused. Copilot would have been one of them. Not as much anymore, but certainly agent. There's just words that get like kind of churned up. And so when I saw Copilot or Cameo came out, I said, oh, that makes sense for what it is. I mean, I get why they use that name, but also confusing because there's a Cameo app that most people are at least familiar with. They might have used in years past. So anyway, Cameo, the company, has claimed the trademark of the word cameo. So U.S. District Judge Jyunmi K. Lee imposed a temporary restraining order that blocks OpenAI from using the word cameo as well as any similar sounding words or phrases on Sora. So it's just a temporary restraining order issued on the 21st, so just a few days ago, and expires on December 22nd. There's a hearing on the matter. As of Monday afternoon, they said Sora was still using the cameo language. And so on and so forth. It goes on from there. So not a big deal. Like, this isn't like huge, not like what you were just saying, Andy, where it has huge implications, but just interesting that like there's all this weird jockeying for these words and terms. And I find that fascinating. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know there's a lot of resources to go into how things are named, especially when they're high stakes like these companies and stuff. But man, oh man, does it seem like they pull from a small pool. I've joked and said so much of it is, astrology based or the stars and stuff. And I get that. Shoot for the moon. It's AI to Mars and beyond. And I get that imagery and why they would do that. But I do feel like for all that we get out of creativity, maybe this is a nice pivot over to Opus 4.5. For all we get out of creativity with these models, can't we come up with some other names here? Can't we do a little better? I mean, how hard can it be to come up with a term that nobody else is using that still exactly defines what it is,
Yeah. So before we move over to Anthropic and their release of Claude Opus 4.5, which kind of blew everybody else out of the water, I will be astounded by just the rapid succession here in a matter of weeks of the displacement of the top frontier models as one releases after the other. Wow. If we thought that there was a ceiling that we were hitting in terms of model competence, no, that's not happening. There's a bunch of leapfrogging going on. But I wanted to just weave off of OpenAI, which was the Cameo story.
Right.
And just in time for the holidays, OpenAI, led by Fiji Simo, this is the applications division. She's the CEO there. They launched an interactive shopping discovery feature. It searches the web for you, asks clarifying questions, generates a personalized buyer's guide for any number of products that you want, and you can guide the research in real time by saying, well, no, not like that product, but yeah, I like this product. Let's go more in that direction. And the system draws on the memory to personalize this for you on an ongoing basis. It's powered by a mini model, a GPT-5 mini, that's specifically trained on shopping tasks. So your shopping concierge is now available in OpenAI. Wow. So try it out and tell me what you think. I'm looking forward to trying it myself because I was involved in shopping search
Mm-hmm.
way back at the beginning of the internet. In 1997, I joined Excite as the first GM and VP of e-commerce to start shopping on the web. So shopping search has always been in my blood, and I'm
Yeah.
really curious to see how AI is powering that now.
I threw this up on screen really quick because I wasn't sure either. We heard, well, in our Slack channel, we heard that Karl said he tried it and he thought it was pretty interesting. But truthfully, I didn't know where you grabbed the shopping. It had shown up as a try now, and then it
Yeah.
kind of disappeared after that. So I just wanted to point out that it is actually just one of these pluses here. So when you're in your normal ChatGPT plus, and now under deep research, at least for me, I have shopping research, and I don't know. We'll throw something in there. We can always come back to it, but let's say Andy, I don't know. Let's go with I need a new laptop that can keep up with the latest AI. We'll even say open source models. Let's just say something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I like
Just
this.
because you would need a
Let's see
higher,
how this
you would
works.
need a more robust laptop for something like that. So we can let that go. I'll actually jump over to a different topic here really quick. And we'll come back to that one in a second, because I know we want to spend a little more time, a little extra time on what Anthropic came out with. This doesn't have anything to do with Anthropic. And I did check because I wasn't on the show yesterday. And Andy, you said you did mention a little bit about Notebook LM, but man, oh man, has Notebook LM really just keeps delivering. And it's not shocking, right? Like Notebook LM is now getting all the benefits of Gemini, 3, and it's getting all the benefits of Nano Banana Pro. And so it's not crazy to see that now that we're getting bigger and badder slide decks. We're getting more infographics. We're getting custom style prompting for visual overviews. Remember, good God, not like 3 months ago or something like that, we were like, oh, maybe 4. Oh, look, it creates whole visual slide decks. We started with getting we had the podcast, feature, if for lack of a better name, but the audio overview is what it's called. We had that as early as last year, because some of us remember Spotify came out, they had partnered with Google and sort of used it as far as their year in review for music. And quite honestly, it kind of messed it up, but nonetheless, they used it as part of that. And it was really cool. And everybody's like, oh my God, you can make these podcasts. And so like, that's kind of where Notebook LM, even though it had existed previously, and Andy, you and I were already using it because it's a free tool and why not? But man, they've just delivered. They've shipped and delivered all year on this product and made it better and better and better. Don't forget, in 2025, we saw, not to make this a review show, but we saw the introduction of the new learning methodology, where you had like the
Guided
Socratic learning.
learning is really incredible, and I hope that they surface it more clearly in the product suite,
Yeah.
because it's there, but it's hard to find.
Yeah, it's a little buried. Yeah, I agree with you. It's phenomenal, though. Don't forget, well, no, the storybook thing was outside of Notebook. That was part of Gemini, I think, when the one I was demoing that with my daughter and stuff. But anyway, my point is that, like, if you've maybe taken a month away, if you haven't gone into Notebook LM in the last, let's be honest, 30 days, I highly recommend circling back and letting people know, like, hey, I would go check it out. It is free, and you are getting a lot of value for free. They really, Google was really delivering here. So I love it. I think that's great. And I think, when we talk about resources, what you pay or don't pay for with AI, I highly recommend using Notebook LM. By the way, it is better on the pro account through Scale. But like when I do it through my work account, don't get me wrong, there is benefits to having it on through a pro account, but you could certainly use it and get a lot of benefits out of it. So just wanted to bring that up really quick. Let's go back over really quick to our shopping, and it looks like we didn't get very far. Let's see real quick here. Spend a few minutes researching. Have ChatGPT dig deep to find products. Didn't I literally just tell it to do that? I'm not really sure why I had to pick on that. Give quick feedback to help ChatGPT pick the best options. Okay. Preview and rate. Oh, so I have to do the work? Now, what sense does that make if I have to do the work to figure out whether
Yeah,
this
how
is
does
the
that
right option?
compare? It should give you for this step. I mean, this is a big UX, gaffe in my view. If you're going
Yeah.
to say more like this, you want to pick between two.
Yeah.
Okay. So it gives you something there that you say, yeah, more like this one, not that one.
I agree with you. And it's saying skip and not interested. My point to this is if I'm writing this up here, I need a new laptop that can keep up with the latest OpenAI source models. Okay, even if it's whatever you said is using Mini or whatever model you said it's using behind the scenes to it, there should be enough intelligence there for it to predetermine and give me some sort of like description of like, well, this is probably what we're talking about. I would expect it to come back to me and say like, you need, if that's what you're looking for, let's be clear. You're looking for something that has at least entry level. Now, I didn't even touch anything, and this just came up on its own. So I don't know if it searched for 4 minutes and 38 seconds. I guess that other part was like sort of an in between.
Yeah, and it's also an optional thing, apparently, where you can give it guidance based on its promoting one
Okay.
product as a possible thing of interest, but you don't have to, and it's going to continue its search.
Okay, so this makes way more sense to me because I was like, why do I have to be involved for the search process that early if I'm relying on AI? This is what I was expecting. You want a machine that can run or even fine tune model open source models logically, which usually means a fast NVIDIA GPU with lots of VRAM, plenty of RAM. Yeah, I mean, this is not going to be like for this particular case, this would not be a cheap laptop, not even close. So we can see the best overall here, why you should pick this one. Comparable. Okay. I don't mind this UX, Andy. This looks all right.
Yeah.
Additional balance premium. Does it tell me where I can buy? Does it have anything? I guess that's PC World. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Andy? On here you go. Here's a price on here from Best Buy. Yeah, $2,700. That's about what I would expect. Pixelated, so like whatever the images that they pulled through was really low quality. So you can see that didn't really work, but
Yeah.
that's not their
Yeah.
fault.
Well,
What do you
I
think,
like
Andy?
this. This is this is kind of familiar to me because I use GenSpark, which does a similar kind of shopping search, uh, but it's basically using its super agent to go out and collect all the information, all the
Mhm.
reviews, all of those things. So OpenAI has packaged something that their very vast number of consumer users can immediately take advantage of without going through the process of either adding a new subscription for an agent model like Manus or GenSpark, or having to subscribe.
Yeah.
They're already subscribed, or this is probably available in the free version because OpenAI's objective is to become the funnel for e-commerce, right? They
Yeah.
want people to use their system for shopping search, and then they could potentially create some kind of advertisement around this sort of thing.
And
Special
so my answer to
promotions
this
can
is
show
this
up
is
on the
great,
side.
but I would much rather just see this inside my Google search, right? And I think that's always going to be the struggle. Not that OpenAI doesn't have big plans, and they've already said that they want to be more of an operating system. They've already said ChatGPT will not look like what you think ChatGPT looks like in 2026. That's straight from the horse's mouth. That they are thinking of it as more of this base operating system where all the other players can build and do these things or whatever. But I just think this is a tough hill to climb when if Gemini or Google has this available, that's just going to be more or less my default. But I could be wrong on that. Anyway, it's maybe I'd use it. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to kind of read through this and kind of see it. I think it's visually appealing, and if it helps me do quick research, I mean, at the very bottom here, I was just going to show Andy. It said, real world shopping tip. If you see a fast RTX 4880 or 4080 unit around 2 to 3K with a solid retailer feedback or trusted review, jump now rather than waiting for the theoretical future stock. Unless you need exactly 16 gigabytes of VRAM or the absolute fastest GPU, many local models use cases are already handled well by these picks today. So I think that's helpful, right? If you're going to be a shopper or whatever. So,
Yeah,
all right, well, we can move on here. I'll share this tab first, Andy. And but if you would, I don't know if you want to kind of kick things off as far as Opus 4.5. Or
Yeah, let me just give an overview here.
Yeah, let me take it off.
High level overview. So um, here's a point of information about the release of Claude Opus 4.5. Anthropic, when they hire engineers, they give a take-home engineering exam where they have to take home. It means it's going to be done on a computer, right, and tracked for time because they have 2 hours to do the exam, and it's notoriously difficult. Within that 2-hour time limit, Opus 4.5 scored higher than any human candidate ever has. That's how good it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Superhuman. It's a superhuman coding agent, but it has lots of capabilities beyond that. But it's the first model ever to exceed 80% on the SWE bench, software engineering benchmark. And here's another interesting point. Just a few days ago, we talked about the release of OpenAI's Codex 5.1 Max, which was, released almost in the sort of the aftermath of 3.0. Like Gemini 3.0 came out, best coding agent in the world. Codex Max comes out, best coding agent in the world. And now Codex Max used a special capability to overcome limitations in the context window and continuity of its effort over a long period of time while working on multiple steps in a complex coding project that Google had already covered by the success of their very large context windows, right? They had 1 million and 2 million token context windows. But what Codex Max demonstrated was a thing they called compaction, which is basically packaging up the context that from a first part of a conversation and moving it into the next one in a compressed form, compacted context. Well, guess what? Claude Opus 4.5 has automatic context compression, enabling unlimited conversation length. Okay, so every one of these players now has really long context windows, really successful things. And let me just, I know you have a table there, but I thought this image that gives you a comparison, can you put that up on the screen there?
Yeah, it's loading now. 1 second. There you go.
Okay, so notice here, now this is also compacted, right? 0 to 70 is 70% accuracy is compressed into this little, slip in the bottom. So if you saw these in their full extent, you'd see that they're all pretty close, right? They're all pretty close. The worst, Opus 4.1, is at 75%. And the next one's at 81%, right? Which is Opus 4.5. So look at GPT 5.1 Codex Max. That just came out recently after Gemini 3.0 Pro. You see it goes 76.2. Let's round them. 76. It goes to 78 with GPT 5.1 Codex Max, and then Opus 4.5 jumps to 81. Those are big numbers at the margin, right? But again, if you look at the competence of any one of these coding agents, they're all damn good. Right. You're not going to, I'm not going to decide to use Codex Max, just because it bested Gemini 3 Pro by, a little over a point. There's other factors that blend into that. And a lot of them have to do with the personality and the style of the coding. And Nate Jones has done a really nice comparison of Codex and GPT-3, I think it was. He compared the two and showed that there are actual differences there in the style, the approach that those models take, not just do they solve the coding problems on the benchmark.
Yeah, and then you've got that screenshot. Actually, just below that, here I can show it on my screen. There we go. Is the cost, right? Because Opus. The first time Opus came out, when they first came out with Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus, Opus was, I won't say prohibitively expensive, but you weren't jumping into Opus unless you
Yeah.
really had a use case. And so, even still, we can see the pricing now is $5 and $25. That's input versus output per million tokens, making Opus level capabilities accessible to even more users, teams, enterprise. But don't kid yourself. That's still expensive. Like over time. I don't think Opus 4.5 is going to become your default model with using Claude. That would be my guess. But as people are saying, no, these are cherry picked, right? Because they're bringing people who have good things to say. But one of them is talking about how 4.5 is now at a price point where it could be your go-to model for most tasks. That's Jeff Wang, CEO of Windsurf. And then Mario Rodriguez, Chief Product Officer at GitHub, says 4.5 delivers high quality code and excels at powering heavy duty agentic workflows with GitHub's GitHub Copilot. Early testing shows it surpasses internal coding benchmarks while cutting token usage in half. And I think that's the part, they have it bolded, so obviously they want you to focus on that. Yeah. That's the part, Andy, that I think is, if true, right?
Yeah. So let me, I have some numbers on that. So
great. Yeah.
Opus 4.5 matches Sonnet 4.5's. So Sonnet, the next step down in the models scheme on Anthropic, it matches Sonnet 4.5 using 76% fewer tokens. So 1/4 of the tokens at full throttle. So adding thinking effort, it beats Sonnet by 4.3 percentage points while using 50% fewer tokens, half the tokens. So there's real efficiency built into 4.5. And I'm not sure what steps they took. There's no explanation yet, but I'm sure people will be studying this. How did they get such an incredible improvement in the number of tokens consumed in the process of thinking, and still, beat the scores? I mean, there's some tuning there that is not completely revealed yet, but I'm sure, Karl probably has read the system card and there's a lot of information available there. But again, this just came out. Like, we're talking about it today because it came out yesterday during the day.
Yeah, for sure. And just, I want to throw this up as sort of a last point, or, one of the last point, because I was just talking about pricing. Opus 4.5, we talked about input versus output is $5 versus $25. Let's compare that to Sonnet 4.5, which is $3 and $6, or Haiku 4.5, which is $1 and $5. So really where you're seeing the biggest difference here is obviously output, but that's to be expected. 4.5 is also showing some pricing for prompt caching, and what is that, per million tokens? Is that what that stands for? MTOK?
That's right. Per million.
I guess they all are million tokens. Sorry, I was thinking that was different down there. So I'm not as familiar, Andy, maybe you are, I'm obviously familiar with input output because we've had those now for a long time. And Sonnet 4.5 does break it down based on whether you're above or below 200,000 tokens, which I've seen before. But are you any more or less familiar with the prompt caching?
Yeah, let me explain how prompt caching works.
Sure.
So if you're in a coding session or just in a conversation with a model, and you have something that is like a guidebook for what you're talking about in that conversation, you put that into the prompt, and then what that does is it becomes a part of the prompt that gets sent with each additional query. And so it's not, you're basically consuming a lot of tokens repeatedly that you don't need to do.
Right.
Prompt caching takes something that you set as a context for this whole conversation and puts it in memory, basically. So you're not feeding it through every single time as new context for the inference run. So that prompt caching basically economizes on the number of tokens that are being used in every turn of the conversation by a special system, but that I don't fully understand. Like, how do they actually manage this when they're feeding all of these, tokens in through the system? I'm not clear about how that works, but the idea is very fundamental, and it's going to keep that one live in context without you having to feed it in as a prompt each time.
Yeah. No, it's a good explanation of it. I appreciate that. I think this obviously all comes back down to, if Haiku, or I'm sorry, Opus 4.5 can achieve high level coding. Again, not my particular use case, but I know there's lots of people out there that are heavily reliant on uh, Anthropic because they've just been, not to take anything away from Codex or Gemini, but anyway, lots of enterprises have been using the coding side of Anthropic in the models. Obviously, there's even at the higher cost, there's some significant money to be saved if they're reaching efficiencies at 75%, less tokens, and which I'm sure trickles down into the caching as well, right, Andy? Like it all plays a role. So I would imagine there's quite a few enterprise companies who rely on this, and perhaps even small medium businesses who are just really, really excited about this announcement. That's not to take anything away from the day-to-day users, but is this, again, going back to, as you showed, the sort of truncated graph that you showed on the screen, it will show it again, but like, you're right to point out that it looks visually like there's a bigger difference, but upon closer inspection of the graph, it starts at 70. So if we were to put this on a normal graph, you would almost not be able to tell the difference. There would be slight changes at the top. So
Yeah.
is this going to impact how I use it? Probably not necessarily. I don't think I've ever used Opus. I've always relied on Sonnet because it's been so good. What I'd be curious about is whether they've made any changes in terms of their usage limits, because the one thing that really pushed me away from Claude probably summer, maybe a little before summer, was I was working on a big project and they would just, Claude would be like, take 3 hours off. You got to come back, which is really something we used to see all the models do that in 2023. Either that they're a victim of their success because they have people who would easily do 12 hours straight of coding using Claude, and they're rate limiting that or whatever the case is. But that, for me, a day-to-day user, that's a big issue, because my work life does not work around when Claude thinks I can take a break. That's just not the way the day runs. So I cannot rely on it as my one go-to model, because I literally cannot run up against those. I'd have to have 7 accounts. I can't run up against those limits. Now, in the spirit of keeping this show at a reasonable length today, Andy, or whatever, if you're okay with it, I'm sure there'll be more to come out on Claude and Opus 4.5. But I did want to share just a really quick sort of like use case of how I've been using Gemini. Before I do that too, I want to bring this up on screen because it's kind of in line with what I'm about to say. AA Ron said, I'm honestly starting to transfer my stuff over to Gemini so I don't have to bounce back and forth. I will tell you, I'm not saying I'll stay this way, because I like to try things out. I like to test things. And I think you really got to get in there. If you truly want to say, I have an opinion about this, or I feel this way or that way, you have to use the models more than a few times, but I've happily stayed with Gemini for the last probably 2 weeks, whenever it came out. I don't know. I was sort of fanboying on it a couple days ago on the show, but I've just, like, it doesn't limit me. It never cuts me. It never cuts off. I mean, I've used it so much for all different client work and stuff that it never cuts off. It's very, very good at explaining what it is the goals are. We went back to, and we talked about early on about how with the prompting that I shared in our community, it was like, it needs a focused goal. I really think that ends up being a really big part of sort of the secret sauce of Gemini. So I'll share this really quick. Did it come up? Let me see. So not much to see here other than it says the Infinite Bard. But one of my side projects for fun, is that I want to do, I've talked about it on the show before. I want to be in the car. I just finished a lot of driving to and from Georgia in the last 4 days. So I felt this pain, and I want to build something that works with, Android Car or CarPlay, whatever. And you're able to basically do like a choose your own adventure. I just feel like we're there. I know the models can achieve this. And so when I was working through this project, requirement document, essentially, right? The PRD, as you explained, Andy, one of the things you realize pretty quickly is that the gems are so good now that they really do serve a great purpose for quick testing and iteration of those baseline prompts. And so that's what I just wanted to kind of prove here, is that although this gem, the Infinite Bard, is not the intended end result, the fact that you can, custom GPTs are the same way. I'm not taking anything away from them, but the fact that I can build so quickly and product test what an end result might look like, and I can kind of theorize about this or that or the other, and do that very quickly using Gemini 3 in the gem, has become like sort of a superpower. So, behind this, behind the Infinite Bard here, I can actually show the prompting in a second. But basically what it'll do is it'll do a basically choose your own adventure. Now in here, I'm doing it as text, but in the future state of this, I will be using the model that's the multilingual model, or not multilingual, multimodal model from Gemini, that is not converting text to speech and audio and back. It's literally doing the back and forth of the audio, right? It's actually the voice mode, the multimodal mode we all want, which is to say it's not doing conversions. And so the latency drops considerably. And so some future state of this, either, well, let's be honest, getting it into CarPlay would actually take a lot of actual effort. You have to get that approved for it to show up through Apple, right? So that's like a future state. But that doesn't mean that I can't quick connect my phone with an app that's running this, that simply is running through the audio system of the car without having the interface of CarPlay. So that's like phase 3, right? Phase 1 is like, will Gemini do a good job of creating back and forth stories in this particular case? Does it feel fun? Is it interesting? And then phase 2 is get it on the phone, get it stable, get it reacting to you, figure out where your latency is, build from there. And then if that's all great and you're at a point where it actually is a viable working choose your own adventure type app on your phone, getting it to CarPlay is probably the least of your worries. It's more of a time commitment, right? So you can kind of like break this all out and say like, well, what's today versus tomorrow versus the next day? And if we go in here and say just give me a few story options. I do tend to like mystery and an action, let's say, and just see what it comes back with, whatever. Now, I ran this yesterday when I was building this, and I'll show you the prompting on the back end in a second. And also, again, you know what? I'm happy to share this stuff. I don't want to protect this and keep it close to the vest. So I will put both the direct link to the Infinite Bard gem in our community, and I will also put the prompting that's behind it in our community. So people can see it. They can rip it apart. They can play with it. They can do other things with it. Totally fine by me. That's sort of the fun of it. And our community, by the way, is the Daily AI Show community.com. I kind of ran that, the Daily AI Show community.com. That will take you to the Slack login page. It's free. And then you can join the community there and you'll be able to see the link. So it says, I've unlocked the archives of the Infinite Bard. Since you crave the adrenaline of action woven with tangled threads of mystery, I've curated 3 distinct entry points for you. Listen closely to these premises and tell me which you wish to inhabit, which world you wish to inhabit, right? So we have the neon fugue. I don't even know what that means.
Fugue. It's called fugue.
What is fugue, Andy?
It's a type of music. It's a segment of music.
Is it?
So I'm not a musician of any note.
I mean, the fact that you know what fugue means.
I'll come back to you with a definition on fugue. How about that?
Well, I'm not picking fugue because I don't know it. So we'll move on. But The Salted Wreck, a thriller, 1920s prohibition, fog so thick you can taste the salt, the rattle of the Tommy gun, and the whispers of a language that shouldn't exist. The Hook. You're a disgraced private investigator sent to the crumbling port town of Oakhaven. A bootlegging operation has gone silent, but the locals aren't talking about the mob. They're terrified about what's coming out of the sea at high tide. The question, can you solve the case before you lose your mind or your soul? Right? So,
okay. So before you go on, you might want to go back to the fugue because here, a fugue is a composition in which a short phrase, the subject, is introduced by one part and successively taken up by the others and developed by interweaving the parts. So a fugue is this interesting musical composition that, you can just imagine in an orchestra. some kind of theme is created by one set of instruments, and then that gets picked up by another set of instruments, but modified a little bit and woven together until they all meet in some grand conclusion, so in the interwoven finale.
Well, I love the idea. I'd definitely be curious to see where that option goes. And we don't have time, obviously, on the show here to go through these, but I mean, we definitely can. We can run a few of them and see where they go. I will tell you this, and I'll just I'll hide this on the stream real quick. So I will tell you this. This is what happened yesterday. So I'm testing this now. For those who are following along, I know a lot of the folks that are in the chat, but if not, I did a whole segment about this last week that I want to rehash. But really quickly, what I'll say is that I built a gem builder. Basically. Okay. So I developed this idea, sort of the project requirement document, basically. Then I took just the gem, which I told you was sort of phase one, went over to my gem builder. Okay. And then I used that architect to help me extract out and put all the good parts into it, which then helped me build the actual gem prompting. Okay. And so that was the sort of the process there. So anyway, what I love about that, and I've told you this, Andy, is that the phase 4 of using that gem architect is red teaming, essentially. And you can immediately dive in and it'll say, okay, here's the premise. So I just wanted to see how long it would talk. One of the biggest challenges I'll have in this, I guarantee you, if I push this all the way through to the end, is how long the AI will speak before it asks for interruptions. And there's a number there, right, Andy? How long do I want to listen to a story before I get to interact again? What's too short? What's too long? What feels just right? I'm not sure. But I know that oftentimes if you were just to say something like talk for 3 minutes to AI, it understands tokens. It can do, but 3 minutes doesn't really have a whole lot of say for AI. It's usually going to default to less than that because of token usage and things like that. So anyway, the story it gave me was basically you heard the setup there, but I show up basically at this lighthouse. And I'm the only one there, and the wind is howling, and it's asking me, do you want to go in the door? Or do you want to search around the back? And so I'm like, well, let's search around the back. I just got there, right? So then I choose the adventure. I go around the back or whatever, and there's this lantern. They're talking really descriptively in the story. You could smell the oil that they used to this lamp, but it's been crushed by a foot, and there's some scrape marks in the back end of it, but the wind is really picking up. So I choose to go inside, right? I'm like, well, get out of the wind or whatever. I get inside and it's pitch black, but now it's quiet and nothing's going on, but there's a desk in the corner. And so I choose to light a light to go over to the desk. And there's some normal notes on there, but then all of a sudden, Andy, it starts saying in big letters in the middle of a page, just frantically written, the light hungry, the light hungry, the light hungry 3 times. And it don't know what that means. So now I have another option. Do I strike another match? Do I keep looking around the desk? With that, there's a sound from above, high inside at the top of the swirling metal stairs. It sounds like somebody's dragging their foot across grates or something. It's metal on metal, and it's super descriptive in this story. And it's what do you want to do? I'm like, find a weapon and get back towards the door in case I need to get out. Now, here's the cool thing. Because it's Gemini and it's fun, it gives me 3 options. It's what do you want to do? But I was able to go into the story and go, I like option A, but I also want to start moving myself to the door. And it doesn't get thrown by that because the way the prompting was built. Here's the key to it. And this was Gemini coming up with this. It said, we need to create a silent markdown file that keeps track of all the items that you've used along the storyline so that it knows that you've already used 2 matches. And so what it does silently is it rewrites this markdown file in Canvas that becomes the ledger of the story. And so as I'm going through the story and going back and forth with things, it's keeping up with what I've done previously so that it's not all weird that I'm like, well, go see if there's some monster up the stairs. And then it doesn't understand that I did that previously. Yeah. And so it's building its sort of history to
it. I just want to, I'm really getting what you're saying there. And I think it's an advance in a technique for creative writing in concert with an AI. And I don't know that there's any, I know there are many, many creative writing tools out there, but I don't know that any of them have thought about just that idea of having an open canvas that is going to be able to go in multiple different directions,
Yeah,
not programmatically, but really in response to user inputs. But it has to maintain the context from the entire conversation.
exactly right.
And the markdown file insertion there is an interesting way of accomplishing that.
And it's efficient because if you think about it, it didn't try if I went to that story and I said the fugue one, right? The noir fugue. If I wanted to go down that road, it hasn't decided to write that whole story. What Gemini is absolutely not doing is trying to come up with the entire story arc. It's coming out with, and this is what I think Gemini does better than anybody else that I've seen. Of course, I don't know 4.5 yet or from Opus, whatever, but if I'm being honest, this is the cure, like the big difference for me with Gemini is that it can do really well with sort of a broad set of requirements. And in this case, what it does for itself is, okay, that's the story you want to do. Here are some broad requirements. We're going to stay inside this bubble, but pretty much anything inside that bubble is going to be really reflective or reactive to the way you want to do. So when I say move towards the door, even though that wasn't one of the three options, it was a hybrid of like one or two of the options. It didn't throw off the story because the story had not been written in the next chapter. It's as if Gemini says, we've kept our ledger. We know what's happened in the past. Here are the directions. And it's literally writing the next part of the chapter. So to say that this book has some predetermined ending is absolutely wrong. This book is literally, this choose your own adventure is literally being written as I interact with it. And so therefore, no two stories would ever be identical because you're actually leaning into the power of models being predictive. They don't know how to rewrite the same story unless you distinctly told them how to do that or gave them severe guidelines. So what I love about this is that you're actually leaning into what makes Gemini Gemini. It's the fun side. And so I just wanted to share that with people. And I don't know that you'd be much to gain off of like the prompting here, but you know, you've said it yourself, Andy, like it really likes to do the XML tags and stuff. And once again, you know, we can see that's how it's decided to write the prompting. And you can see the triggers again, where the output is, the update rules, the Canvas protocol needs to be pulled in again. Here's the narrative engine. But truth be told, it's only that long.
Yeah.
It blows my mind what Gemini is able to do with a relatively short prompt. I don't know how many, you know, characters this is, but it's short. There are no other knowledge documents associated with this gem.
Just out of curiosity, when you were developing that prompt with Gemini, how many turns did it take before it came back with the final one that you inserted into the gem?
2.
Yeah,
maybe.
It's pretty quick. Yeah,
because I started as the PRD. Then I was like, oh, I do want to do the gem first. Then I got some like baseline for the gem, put that into the gem architect. And because it already has knowledge on, remember previously, what are the rules of the road for writing a gem? It pretty quickly had it. I think I might have made 1 or 2 corrections because I was like, you know what it did? Honestly, this is what it was, Andy. It said it wanted to go a little too far down like the D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. And I don't really have a background in that. And it just wasn't. I was thinking kid, choose your own adventure. And I didn't want to go down this path of Dungeon Master. And it sort of was starting to go there. And I thought, I get it, but that's just not my background. And so I don't want those wording to be in. And so I corrected it there and pulled it out. And I think I had 1 or 2 corrections, maybe 2, 3 iterations to get it to where I wanted to. And it needs more. I still think I'd like to see it talk a little bit longer before it asks for interaction. But all things considered, very quick. I mean, I did this last night for fun when I got home, just to kind of like unwind. And so I just wanted to point it out to people so they feel like they can go play, you know. And I think Gemini is a really fun one to go play with. So anyway,
and one of the things that'll accelerate your own play with this sort of thing is to, you know, start a conversation, but then go to the Daily AI Show community.com and pick up the Gem Architect prompt that Brian carefully built that will actually create the prompt out of whatever your conversation is around the functionality that you're looking for and create the gem that will produce that. And that's what he did. He followed that path, but he did some prep work, which he shared previously, which is the Gem Architect, a really good tool that you should have in your quiver if you're going to use Gemini.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can wrap it up there. I mean, look, it's simple. If Haiku Opus 4.5, if I was going to use that tool, the first thing I do is build a tool to help me use 4.5, because there's always going to be a cookbook.
Yeah.
There's always going to be documentation. There's going to be a Nate Jones article. There's going to be something that people have already figured out some of the guidelines. And so as soon as I feel like I have enough, that's what I do, is I try to build the tool for the tool. Okay, now as we wrap up things today, Andy, so don't forget, go to the dailyishowcommunity.com if you want to see this prompt, if you want to see the previous prompt that we were just talking about. All of that will be in there and for your use if you decide to do that. And then don't forget, we'll be back the rest of this week. Yes, it is in the States. It's Thanksgiving, but we plan on have shows all week long. I'll be out tomorrow. I think, Andy, you'll be here and Beth will be here. I think Karl said he'll be here as well, maybe even Jyunmi. I'll be back on Thanksgiving and Friday. So you'll have parts of the crew all the way through the week. So make sure you keep coming back and hanging out with us. And now, Andy, before we go, I can tell you this is already going to be a problem, because I now have I don't have the end stream. I only have to go live. I know, but I know how to fix it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to come back in. So you hang tight. Don't go anywhere. And then when I come back in, I should have the end stream.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, you can fill while I'm gone.
I'll chat with the audience here for a moment. Well, I wanted to point out something that I came across yesterday, which was a thing called Vertex Academy. Vertex Academy is basically a package of prompts that you buy to create a custom GPT, but its website and its business model are such that you basically buy that package of prompts, and it looks like it's pitched to both teachers and students as a solution for having an AI tutor. And I thought it was a really well done sort of commercial approach to custom GPTs. Vertex Academy.
Perfect timing, Andy.
You pay for that, but it looks like a valid business model. All right.
Yep. And I have the end stream. In fact, I got chat back too. So I'm just saying thanks to everybody in the chat. Thank you to everybody in the chat that hung out with us today. Come back the rest of the week. With that said, I have my end stream, so let's use it. See you, everybody.